Last time, I spent 100 hours in Satisfactory, and now we're doubling that. Welcome to 200 hours in Satisfactory. If you haven't seen the last video, you definitely should, but don't worry, I'll give a quick recap of where we left off so you're not lost. At the end of the last video, I built a conveyor bus for Crystal Oscillator Factory, but if you want all the details, go check out the last video. That's exactly where we're picking up from. I'll be working on and refining that factory at the start of this video. So let's jump in. I started by laying down the foundation for the Crystal Oscillator Factory and working toward getting it fully operational. This took about 17 hours in total, mainly because I focused on a very specific exterior design that required several iterations to get right. Along the way, I spent another 2 hours reworking the interior design of my heavy modular frame factory after making some improvements to my initial design while building the Crystal Oscillator factory. Since all my future factories will likely share a similar interior layout, I made several small refinements throughout this video to improve the overall design. With 117 hours on the counter, I moved on to building a high-speed connector factory. This required transporting resources from a distant location, resulting in one of the longest conveyor buses in this playthrough so far, though it's nothing compared to what's coming. This factory took significantly less time to complete than the Crystal Oscillator factory, mainly due to a simplified exterior and no further interior design changes. The entire process, including the conveyor bus, took about 9 hours. During that time, I also completed phase 3 of the space elevator, built a few blueprints, and experimented with hypertube cannons. I'm still undecided on whether I want to set up a full hypertube network later on, but it is a possibility. I also unlocked the bauxite refinement milestone. By the 132nd hour mark, I finally started work on the Nobelisk and Smokeless powder factory, a project I had planned nearly 100 hours ago. I take notes at the end of each sessions and list objectives for future builds, and this one had been sitting in my objectives list since hour 39. So after many delays, I finally got around to building it. The entire build process, including the conveyor bus, took about 6 to 7 hours. With no major interior design changes and a simple exterior, this factory came together relatively quickly. At 139 hours, I started noticing performance drops, especially after playing for long sessions. I knew that signs were linked to performance issues, so I went on a Big Sign Purge, removing mostly useless sign lights I had placed over the first 100 hours. By the end of this, I had reduced my total signs from 75,000 signs to about 25,000, which helped smooth out performances while also decluttering the visual landscape. A win-win, basically. However, this cleanup took about 11 hours since I had to replace roads, conveyor buses, power pole placement, and even swap out the light signs on roads for actual light poles, which fit much better aesthetically. 148 hours in, I moved on to building a turbofuel factory/power plant, which should produce about 17,666 megawatts, or at least that's the goal. The factory itself wasn't difficult to build and took about 11 hours, including the conveyor bus. But then I ran into the infamous 600 meters cubed per minute fluid issue. For those unfamiliar, Satisfactory's fluid mechanics makes it nearly impossible to push 600 meters cubed per minute through a single pipe consistently. Even though it should work, pipes sometimes back up unpredictably, causing pumps to stop when they shouldn't. This issue has driven some players to spend over 100 hours troubleshooting fluids. I personally spent about 10 hours trying different solutions, reading horror stories about fluids all over the internet, and troubleshooting before deciding to take a completely different route. Rather than risk burning out on a frustrating game mechanic like many other people, I installed a mod that converts all fluids into gases, bypassing the issue entirely. If any problems arise from this mod in the long run, I'll update you, but so far it's been a massive quality of life improvement. I'll link all the mods I'm using in the description. Some of them are camera mods or time of day mods, but this one mod was definitely a lifesaver for me. The next 13 hours were spent working on new production lines unlocked through bauxite refinement. This included setting up an Alclad aluminum sheet and aluminum casing factory. Since this was before I installed the fluids mod, I spent 2 hours carefully setting up piping to ensure everything worked. Surprisingly, this factory functioned perfectly without issues, even recycling water from the alumina solution in a closed loop, something that often causes problems for other players. After this build, I unlocked the rest of Tier 7 milestones, and I also spent another 7 hours troubleshooting pipes in my Turbofuel factory, but we already covered how that went. At hour 180, I upgraded some blueprints to Mark V belts and began construction on an Iodine infused filter factory, a necessary step if I plan to tackle nuclear power later in this playthrough. This factory was particularly time consuming because it required transporting resources from an even farther location than my previous factories. This meant building the longest conveyor bus of this playthrough so far. I've never done nuclear before, but with my mega factory project planned for the endgame, I'll need a lot of power, and nuclear seems like the way to go, even if it adds complexity. Overall, the entire iodine infused filter factory took about 12 hours to build. Which leads us to the final project of this video. I started to work on a radio control unit factory at around hour 193. It's still unfinished, but the factory is operational and up and going. This build was particularly challenging due to the sheer number of interwoven pipes and conveyor belts. At one point, I completely lost track of where everything was going, but after some trial and error, it's now running smoothly. I'm currently working on the exterior design and still need to paint the factory, but that will be for the next episode. So that's where I'll leave things for this episode. Next time, I'll focus on finishing the remaining builds needed to unlock the rest of Tier 8 milestones, completing Phase 4 of the Space Elevator, and hopefully unlocking Tier 9, and starting work on a nuclear power plant to prepare for my mega factory project. I don't even know if I said this last time, but if I did, for those of you who don't know, the end goal of this series is to collect all the resources in the Dune Desert and rare materials from across the map, bring them to a centralized location, and construct a mega factory. If you don't want to miss that, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you've made it this far into the video, first of all, thank you so much. This is a huge project of mine, and I really appreciate all of you. I'm thinking it will take me about 400 hours, so there might be 2 or maybe 1 more video. It depends. This is just me off the cuff, no script. I wanted to talk to you guys more freely. For me, this is a humongous project. I understand that many other people have done much bigger projects on this game, but for me, unlocking aluminum, that's usually where I give up. So I'm very glad I've managed to push through that, and I'm very glad I have an objective, which is making that huge mega factory. But yeah, if you guys have any tips, any recommendations for making mega factories, I've never done them. I've watched some videos of other content creators who've kind of broken it down, but if you have any tips, leave them in the comments. Thank you so much. Have fun, and I'll see you next time.